Today we celebrate the second day of our Triduum, Good Friday. On Good Friday, we remember the day Jesus willingly suffered and died by crucifixion as the ultimate sacrifice for our sins. Still, why the day of Jesus' death is called Good Friday instead of Bad Friday or something similar? Some Christian traditions do take this approach. In German, for example, the day is called Sorrowful Friday. In English, in fact, the origin of the term good is debated. Some believe it developed from an older name, God's Friday. Regardless of the origin, the name Good Friday is entirely appropriate because the suffering and death of Jesus, as terrible as it was, marked the dramatic culmination of God's plan to save his people from their sins. In order for the good news of the gospel to have meaning for us, we first have to understand our condition as sinful people. The good news of deliverance only makes sense once we understand this. Another way of saying this is that the gospel of Jesus' grace comes and brings us relief and salvation. In the same way, Good Friday is good because as terrible as that day was, it had to happen for us to receive the joy of Easter. The wrath of God against sin had to be poured out on Jesus, the perfect sacrificial substitute, in order for forgiveness and salvation to be poured out on the nations. Without that awful day of suffering, sorrow, and bloodshed on the cross, God could not reward us for our trust in Jesus. Paradoxically, the day that seemed to be the greatest triumph of evil was actually the death blow in God's gloriously good plan to redeem the world from bondage. The cross is where we see the convergence of great suffering and God's forgiveness. Psalm 85 sings of a day when righteousness and peace will kiss each other. The cross of Jesus is where that occurred, where God's demands, his righteousness, coincided with his mercy. We receive divine forgiveness, mercy, and peace because Jesus willingly took our divine punishment, the result of God's righteousness against sin. Jesus endured the cross on Good Friday, knowing it led to his resurrection, our salvation, and the beginning of God's reign of righteousness and peace. Good Friday marks the day when wrath and mercy met at the cross. That's what Good Friday is so dark and so good.